Right, I know it's raining outside, so thank you everybody for making it time. Today we're going to talk about something we don't usually think about often. We're going to talk about, which I think is very important for us to consider right now, especially we don't usually discuss this, right? You guys get the topic? We're going to talk about nothing. We're going to talk about nothing because it's in a different sense, and we'll see how philosophers back in the days were really marveling about nothingness. Okay? And basically the question we're going to try to answer today. Why is there something rather than what? Than nothing? Why anything exists at all? Why we are here? Right? Have you ever wondered, one night you couldn't sleep and you just wonder why I'm doing here? Why anything are here? Why we go to the grocery? Why there is tomato? Why we eat? Why anything at all are here? Okay? And it's not like a question we just try to answer. All the philosophers back in the days were really considering why is there something rather than what? Than nothing. So today we're going to take this argument by this guy. Leibniz, he is the founder of calculus. So he's a very smart guy, okay? Leibniz asked this question. He said, why is there something rather than nothing? He was a philosopher, inventor, he was a smart guy. And basically he came up with this argument. So we're going to just go through this argument and we'll see what he found out about nothingness. First of all, what is an argument? Do you guys know what is an argument? What is an argument? When you say it's an argument for God or for the existence of God. What do you mean by argument? Anybody?
Proof.
It's proof. Yeah. It's first of all, it's not a conflict. It's not quarrel. It's not I'm arguing with you. A philosopher argument is premises and conclusion. So it's few statement and conclusion. The statement has to be more likely true. And if the statements are more likely true, the conclusion is what? More likely true. So basically, it doesn't have to be 100% true, it's 51 plus for the premises, and then the conclusion will follow. This is number one. It also has to be logical, it has to make sense, the statement has to make sense, and then the conclusion has to follow from the premises, okay? So an argument is premises and conclusion. If the premises are true, the conclusion has to follow. Okay? So what is an argument? An easy argument. Every man has parents. Michael is a man, therefore Michael has parents. Premises, two premises, true. Every man has a parent. As far as we know, yes, it's more likely true. Michael is a man. Questionable? No, I'm just kidding. True. Therefore, the conclusion is what? Michael has parents. Okay? So, premises, more likely true, logical, than conclusion. So now let's see Leibniz's argument about nothingness. He said number one, so three premises and conclusion. This is all what we're going to discuss today, okay? So don't, if we didn't understand it, we're just going to go over it over. If today everybody will go out knowing Leibniz's argument and hopefully understand it. Premise number one, he said everything that exists has what? Has an explanation of its existence. Okay? So what is premise number one? Everything that exists has an explanation of what? Of its existence. This table is here. it has an explanation of its existence. A carpenter made it, a mover moved it, somebody pushed it, somebody lifted the church. Okay? Chair, somebody made it, somebody bought it, and it's here. Somebody moved it here. Okay? So anything that exists has what? Has an explanation of its existence. Okay? 2. If the universe has an explanation of its existence, this explanation is God. Or actually in his language, he said this explanation is a necessary being. Is what? A necessary being. I just wanted God because I prepared it from like a website and he had like a video at the end to summarize this. So like I just want to match whatever the video is saying because I think this will tie everything together. But like with himself, he said if the universe exists, the explanation of the universe existence is a necessary being, or God. 3.
Can it be something?
We're going to find out what is this being. Like, from this argument, we'll come up with few characteristics of the being we're talking about, okay? 3. The universe exists. So what is the conclusion? What is the conclusion that will follow from this? Oh, look over here. I can't get complacent. Okay, so everything has an explanation of its existence. If the universe exists, its explanation is God. The universe exists, therefore what? Therefore what? What follows from this? From the 3 premises. Anything exists as an explanation. The explanation of the universe is God. The universe exists, therefore the explanation of the universe is what? It's God, right? Makes sense? Like logically it follows, right? So the question is, are 1, 2, 3 more likely true or not? Right? Because if 1, 2, and 3 more likely true, the conclusion has to be more likely true. There's no question about it. No matter you like it, you don't like it, it's really not an opinion now. All what you can do in an argument is to attack the premises. Since the conclusion follows, so you can only attack the premises. Okay? Sounds good? So now we're going to do an exercise. I know we didn't speak about anything, but we're going to do an exercise so you guys try to open up your mind. So, exercise of two people. One will be an atheist, one will be a theist. One will try to defend the argument. I know we didn't talk about anything, but just to open up your mind. One will try to defend the argument, one will try to object the argument. Okay? Let's take like 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Just go over 1 or 2. One, just identify one as an atheist, one is a theist, and just do this exercise. Okay? All right. Let's start. guys had a good discussion. Anybody want to share like what is the objection, what is the defense, like which premises is really vulnerable to attack?
Mine was 2, because I was thinking it doesn't have to, like the explanation doesn't have to be God. It can just be a more powerful being who maybe can create human beings, but it doesn't have all the characteristics.
Correct. The word itself doesn't have to be God. As I told you, like his actual word is a necessary being. So that's good. What else? What else? Any objections? Which one you think?
Why? Bishoy, why a being? Why not a thing? يعني
It can't be a thing. We'll find out why it has to be a person thing.
So we're gonna find out why it has to be a person
Why it
first.
have to be a person. Yeah. But you can still say it's a thing. Okay, for now. Again, let me just back up. This argument is like natural theology. So basically, it's not coming from the Bible. It's a guy came up with this argument, so you can agree with him, you cannot agree with him. So it's an open book. Like you really don't have to follow whatever he's saying. Okay. So that gives us like more freedom to talk about. Okay, what else? Anybody has any different objection or? You guys were talking about number 3 here. Joe.
Huh?
Number 3, the universe exists.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't. So,
No, but one thing me and George talked about for number 2 is if there has to be a necessary being to explain why the universe existed, what is the explanation of that being's
Perfect.
existence?
So, if everything has an explanation of its existence, what about God? Right? So, that's an attack to number 1. Okay? Perfect. What else? Anybody want to try to defend 1 or 2?
Yeah, I can defend Joe.
Joe? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if God is created, يبقى لازم يكون في حاجة قبلها who created him. And then you go back لغاية لما هتوصل لحتة where he has to be self-existence.
That's called an infinite regress of explanation. Let's say your brother is crying. Okay? What is the explanation of his crying? Maybe you hit him. Why did you hit him?
Because Qalada hates you.
Why did Clara hit you?
Because I annoyed him.
Huh?
Because I annoyed him.
Because what?
I annoyed him.
You are annoyed. Why?
Why?
What's the explanation? Why you are here? Because your parents got married and you are here. Why does he get married?
Because they love each other.
Why did they love each other? Maybe they studied in the same university or they were living. Why did they move together? Maybe their family didn't find a job or they were fired and they just got moved to a different location. Your dad found your mom. And why did they leave their job? Right? So you will go back to infinity. You will go back all the way to infinity. And you have to stop somewhere. So actually this is what Leibniz said. Because there is an infinite regress, if you're going to go back to explain the explanation of the explanation of the explanation, you cannot go all the way back. So Leibniz said there's things that exist necessarily, and there are things that exist contingently. A table, a chair, most of the stuff we're familiar with exist what? Contingently. They are made by somebody else. God is a necessary existing being. What else? Like some mathematicians think numbers exist by a necessity of its own nature. Like number 5. You don't have to have 5 chairs in order for number 5 to be there. It exists by necessity of its own nature. What else? There's not too many examples of necessary being, because it's really not, it's technically only God is a necessary being. Some philosophers think proposition exists necessary by its own nature. What is proposition? Proposition is the meaning of a sentence. Okay? So let's say, well, give me a sentence.
I am in church.
I am in a church. أو أنا في الكنيسة is the same sentence, right? It has the same meaning, but there is not even a word in common. So each one has its own proposition, which is own meaning. I am in the church, أنا في الكنيسة. They are the same meaning, but it's different word. They both have the same proposition. So some philosophers think proposition of language exists necessarily. Okay? So Leibniz basically said things exist necessarily, all things exist contingently. Okay? There is another objection you guys didn't think about. If you need a necessary being, actually let me give you the full argument for number one. He said everything that exists as an explanation of its existence, either a necessity of its own nature or in an external cause. So now number one is objection proof from we're not having God as an exception right now, right? Because we're saying everything exists as an explanation, either a necessity of its own nature or an external cause. So now God is not an exception. There is no exception now to number one. Everything, including God, has to have an explanation. This explanation can be a necessity of its own nature or an external what? Cause. Okay? Alright, now we spoke about the... Now this is the second question, you guys. Like didn't think. If you need a necessary being and you want to start with God, why not start with the universe? Why not say it's always there and it's always will be and the universe is your starting point? Why not? Right? If you need, as Uncle said, if you need a necessary being to start your explanation, why not start with the universe? Why not start with what we have right now? What do you guys think? At least 5. Who want to start? Me, thank you.
To define being, that being needs to have a will.
Not really. It's maybe it's always been there, and it's maybe that's all what is. It's why do you need? Why you cannot start with the universe as the explanation of everything else? Why? Anybody? Just.
Because the universe has a beginning, so it didn't always exist.
Perfect. So a necessary being has to be necessary. So he cannot not exist. He has to always be there. The universe, as we all the scientific evidence, some philosophers also believe and have argument that the universe has what? A beginning. Has what? Starting point. So he cannot be a necessary being because of what? There was period where universe didn't exist, right? Okay. Anything else you guys can think of? It's not a being as we think of the limited term of the word, but it can actually be an agent, let's say, or a thing.
I think if the universe is the starting point, that cannot explain my existence because I'm a living creature and the universe is not a living creature, so a non-living creature cannot produce a living creature.
What do you guys think? I have no answer.
No.
If the universe is the beginning, and the universe is a non-living, so how, and I'm living, so how my existence can be explained by the existence of the universe?
I mean, you can argue that inside the universe you have trees and you have animals, right? So
Okay.
you know, like there is something can come.
A living creature can come from.
A tree can come out of, if you have the seed and the water and the sun, you can have a tree, right? But I think number one is because the universe is started at one point, it cannot be a necessary being. Yeah.
Well, are we now limiting that being?
What do you mean?
Like we're limiting wherever it is because it's the start of the universe. So
No, we are saying, no, you just came? Okay. We are saying the explanation of the universe has to be beyond the universe. Has to be before, has to be all of there. Cannot not exist. Has to be all of there because a necessary being. If the universe is a necessary being, everything inside the universe is necessary. So in order for the universe to be the starting point, and we'll say the universe is necessary, everything inside the universe should be necessary, because otherwise it cannot change the universe. So basically, the movement of the stars and everything has to be necessary in order for this universe to be the beginning. So for example, a necessary being, if the universe is a necessary being, we all have to be here today in order for this universe to be the start. You try to think about it. If the universe is necessary, everything inside it has to be necessary. So basically, I had to take this step, and I had to go back. But I don't have to go back. So it's not necessary. You know what I mean?
No.
Okay. If the universe is necessary, let's go back. We're talking about why do we need God as necessary being, okay? We're saying one objection, one atheist can say, why not God? If you would say God is a necessary being, I would say the universe is a necessary being. Why go back one step, right? Why not start with what we have? We said number one, the universe has a starting point. So you cannot say the universe is necessary being.
Because it did not always exist.
Right. A necessary being, by definition, cannot not exist. It has to be always there. Right? In order for it to be a necessary. Otherwise, it's not a necessary. Right? So number one, which, very good point, the universe itself has what? A starting point. So it's not a necessary being. Number two, if the universe is necessary, everything in this universe is necessary. So, if I have a tree in front of my house, this tree had to be there because the universe is necessary.
Yes,
right?
He's
Yeah, I
saying,
got it.
he's saying it's not necessary.
Yeah, I'm saying that's why, because we always could have changed it.
Okay.
You got it?
Yeah.
If the universe is necessary, so anything inside the universe is necessary. Which means we wouldn't have free will, basically. I mean, if you don't feel comfortable, just stay with the time thing. Right? 1, 2.
So, they talk about there must be something that's bigger than the universe that is the necessary being, right? But doesn't everything kind of like as you said right now, there's like the universe, right? And if it's a necessary being, and everything inside it must be necessary.
Yeah.
So if you have something bigger than the universe that is a necessary being, and the universe is within that, it's the same thing.
What do you mean? Just explain
So
more.
if you have something, like if you think about it almost as layers, right? So you're saying right now you have a universe, let's say it's the necessary being. Right?
No, but I'm saying, I'm not
saying it's
agreeing.
not.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, let's say it is, right? So if the universe is the necessary being, everything inside would be necessary, right?
Yeah.
But if you're saying something like in that case,
God, I'm saying God is outside.
but does that mean that everything like underneath God or within God needs to be
Right, and we believe that God is changeless.
No,
God,
but I'm saying that's the same logic because in that sense, if that's necessary, if like God is a necessary being, then everything in that is necessary.
everything in the universe would be necessary still?
Because it's almost like it's like a system argument.
No, but it doesn't mean because God created the universe, God is a necessary being. He created the universe. It doesn't mean the universe is a necessary being.
No, I'm saying like, okay, it's the same thing here, that, like, let's say the universe created us. You're saying that just if the universe is a necessary being, and let's say creates us, everything within that would have to be necessary.
Right, but we are part of the universe.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that like.
So I'm saying, so in the same logic.
Let's say God is now the universe, right? Like in this situation, in this example. And
Okay.
he's the necessary being. Then
Okay.
everything within him has to be necessary.
Yes, but not everything can make everything within him as a God. Like
Correct, not everything he made.
So the universe is not part of God. The
So,
universe is
so byproduct.
Why is the exception of the tree, for example?
No, wait, I agree with Marina. So what she's trying to say is if your argument doesn't follow through logically, right? Like the universe can be outside of what's inside of it, right? So like the outside realm of the universe can be necessary without everything inside of it having to be necessary, right? Like it can exist.
No, but when I say the universe, I mean everything. You know what I mean? Like I'm not saying outside.
We include.
I'm not saying, don't think of the universe as Earth.
The trees, the.
Yeah, no, I'm
The
saying.
universe is
what he's
everything.
saying
But
is that
God
if the-
created.
No, but what he's saying is that if, let's say, the universe is the necessary being, and we are within the universe, everything within the universe has to be necessary. So let's say God is a necessary being, then everything within God has to be necessary.
But we're
But not everything God made.
Well, then in the same situation, then if the universe was the necessary being, and it created trees, and it created us, or whatever. then that
But
would be
it's
necessary.
part of the universe. But let's stay with the time. Let's stay with the time. Do you want to add something or?
Just a small thing. So I think what something Marino was trying to say is that when you look at God as a necessary being, everything in him by nature is necessary. We are not in God by nature, but we're in God by creation. And what God creates is not necessary, but everything that God is in himself by nature is necessary.
Let me give you another definition of a necessary being, okay? So, a necessary being, number one, has to always exist. He cannot not exist by definition. Number two, in a necessary being, has to be changeless. Has to be changeless. So this is the point. If the universe is necessary, it has to be changeless. And if you can change it, it's not necessary. Okay? If you don't grasp the whole thing, let's stay with the time response, okay? It's not a necessary being because it was, at one point, it started, okay? I think that's easier and smooth. I will add one more thing. There is nothing special about the material that made the universe. So let's say about this chair. We'll go all the way down, deep to the atom. What is under the atom? Neutron? No. Okay, we'll go to the smallest building block of matter. There is nothing special about these building blocks. We could always have switched it with another set, right? It's really nothing special. Like why you have to stick with atom number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to make this universe? You could always do like 6, 7, 8, 9, right? There is nothing logically necessary about the material itself, like the building block of the universe, right? So it's not necessary. You can always change it. You can always choose different atom. It will be the same thing, like the same material, the same wood, but it's not exactly the same. It's made of the same material, but different atom, right? Make sense? That's easy? Okay. So, any questions so far? Okay. So where we are in the discussion, we said why anything exists. nothing. So this is a question Leibniz is trying to answer. Why anything exists at all rather than nothing? And he came with his argument. Let's review it. So what is the argument? Number one, anything exists has what? Has an explanation, either a necessity of its own nature or an external cause. Number two, if the universe exists, its explanation is God or a necessary being. We didn't address number two yet. Number three, the universe exists, the conclusion, therefore, the explanation of the universe is what? Is God. So now address number one, right? We answer the question, what about God? If everything needs an explanation, what about God? What is the explanation of God? Is a necessary being. You cannot go in an infinite regress of explanation. You have to stop somewhere, okay? We also answer the question, why not start with the universe? Because of time and because of the building block is really not special in the universe. There is another objection. Some people say, of course, this is true. Like everything needs an explanation. It's true in the universe, but not of the universe, right? They say, sure, it's true here, but it's not true before that. What is wrong about this?
The definition of universe.
No, it's a fallacy. You guys know what a fallacy is? A problem with an argument, like a logical problem. Okay? So like it's a defect in logic. So this is called, like philosopher calls this the taxi cab fallacy. What is the taxi cab fallacy? You take a taxi to the airport and you dismiss, once you reach your destination, you dismiss the taxi cab. So he's doing the same thing with the argument. He's taking the argument to his destination. Once he's there, he's dismissing the argument. Okay? So that's a taxi cab fallacy. What is a common taxi cab fallacy? Do you guys know the saying, every rule has an exception, except this one? That's a taxi cab fallacy. I'm saying any rule has an explanation except my rule. I mean, that's childish. That's a taxi cab fallacy. I'm saying anything logically makes sense in the universe, but once you are at the universe, it doesn't make sense. It makes sense in the universe, but not of the universe. You get the fallacy?
Yes.
It's called the taxi cab fallacy, because once you reach your destination, you do what? You dismiss the argument, which is not logically coherent. Perfect. So now we're done with number one. Any objection about number one you can think of? Anything exists has an explanation of its own existence, either a necessity of its own nature or an external cause, right? I will give you like a second to think of anything else maybe you can try to discuss about number one. Anything exists has an explanation of its existence, either a necessity of its own nature or an external cause. We addressed God, what is the explanation of God? We addressed why not start with the universe. We addressed the objection it's true in the universe but not of the universe. Anything else before we move to number two? Any question, any comment before we move to number two? Okay. So now number two, in Brandes 2 in his argument, he's saying, if the universe has an explanation of its existence, this explanation is God. So first of all, what is the universe? What do we mean by the universe? All what?
Solar systems, everything.
Everything, solar system, galaxies, even like everything. So it's all space, all matter, all energy, everything, okay? If you take the universe out, you will be left with nothing. And nothing is not outer space. Nothing is no space. Nothing, they say, a philosopher said, nothing is what rocks dreams about. It's nothing. Like it doesn't exist. It's no space, no time, no matter, no energy, nothing. So the universe is all that. Okay? The universe is all space, time, and matter, and energy. What would be the explanation of all space, time, and matter, and energy? We have two options. It can be something in the universe, like some people say gravity or physics law created the universe. Or it can be something outside the universe. Okay? First of all, it cannot be part of the universe. Because if something inside the universe created the universe, it means that this thing existed before it existed. Right? It means it was there, it's not nothing. And then the question would be, what made this little piece thing that made the whole thing? Right? So it cannot be part of the universe. It has to be what? Outside the universe. So let's see what we got. What God is the explanation of the universe. Forget about the word God. Let's define this being that created everything. Okay? So we already have something from number one. Is what being, blank being necessary. His what? So we already have something. He's a necessary. Timeless, in order for him to create time. Right? In order for God to create time, he has to be timeless, spaceless. In order for him to create space, he has to be spaceless. Immaterial. In order for him to create matter, he has to be immaterial. Powerful. In order for him to create the whole thing, he has to be powerful. Personal. Why it has to be personal? Why it has to be personal? So first of all, any objection about timeless. Any objection about necessary, timeless, spaceless, immaterial, powerful? Any objection so far?
If this necessary being is timeless, then how do they understand the concept of time in order to create it?
It's the same way you do your homework. How do you understand stuff you never did before? Right? It's not because you never read it, you cannot do it, or you never knew it. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't mean because he's timeless, he cannot create time. Right?
Well, is it fair to characterize the necessary being as like omniscient, like all-knowing?
Has what?
Can you say that the necessary being is all-knowing? Any necessary being, if it's a necessary being that exists outside of all these things, then like in order to create these things, it must have an understanding of these things.
Right, I mean I would say powerful. Right? He's so powerful with knowledge, he knows everything. I don't think it follows from here, but it's the next step. Again, this argument doesn't prove our God. It doesn't prove the Christian God, right? It proves a necessary being. But based on the explanation, that's basically what we call God, okay? So what else? Any objection about this 4 plus necessary? So this is the characteristic we're getting about this necessary being. It has to be timeless, spaceless, immaterial, powerful, and then personal. Why do you think it has to be personal? Just think about it. Why this necessary being has to be personal?
يعني ايه personal؟ يعني person
Personal يعني a willing agent.
يعني not جماد not something.
Right. I mean, Gamad, he cannot be Gamad because this is material.
Yeah.
Right? He has to be immaterial.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's not جماد.
Correct. But why he has to have a will? It has to be a personal.
To choose to create.
Exactly. let me tell you.
Because if it's not personal, why create the universe? Why create anything? What's the point?
So why exactly the universe?
No, why create anything at all?
Right. So here's the thing. So now we agreed about there is a cause and effect in this relationship. There is a necessary being as a cause, and then the universe as what or anything exists as its effect, right? So we have a cause and an effect. This cause is timeless, is infinite in the past. If the cause is timeless and the effect started at one point, you need a person to choose to do this effect. Make sense? Let's say it again. So, if the cause is timeless in the past and its effect, the universe, started at one point, it means that the cause choose to do it at this. I mean, I cannot say time, but at this point, right? Because time wasn't there. Let me give you an example. What is a cause and an effect relationship you can think of? Anything. Water freezes when it's X degree. Okay? That's a cause and effect. If it had been always X degree, when do you think water will freeze? Always. The cause will follow the effect. Right? Only if the cause is personal, he can choose at one point to do this effect. Make sense?
Yes.
Just go home and think about it. You'll be fine. If the cause is eternal in the past, and its effect has a beginning, it means that this cause at one point choose to do this effect. Right? That's why it has to be personal. If this chair has always been there, it will always be there. But if you are sitting on this chair from infinite past, at one point you can choose to stand up. You got it? So if the cause is eternal in the past and its effect has a beginning, it means that the cause at one point he wills the effect. Okay? Water, if it always been X degree, it means the water will be always frozen. Right? It will not be like at one point. Okay? That's good. So now what we get from this argument? Anything that exists has what? An explanation. What is the two explanation we can get? We can answer with? Please. A necessity of its own nature or an external cause. If the universe has an explanation, this explanation is God or a necessary being. The universe exists, therefore the explanation of the universe is what? It's God. Make sense? Anybody still believe in God? I think I'm done. Let's just say it. You will say the conclusion. Okay? Let's say 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, conclusion. Okay? let's say premise 1. You want to play? Okay. 1, 2, 3. You don't want to play? You want to say the premise?
Oh.
Yeah, just we'll review.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Everything that exists has an explanation of its existence.
If the universe has an explanation of its existence, this explanation is God.
The universe exists.
Therefore,
With the explanation of the universe's existence is God.
Mina.
Everything that exists has an explanation of its existence.
Either
Either out of necessity of its own nature or an external cause.
2,
The universe has an explanation of its existence. This explanation is God.
3.
The universe exists.
Therefore,
The explanation of the universe's existence is God.
1.
Everything that exists has an explanation of its existence.
2,
If the universe has an explanation of its existence, this explanation is God.
3.
The universe exists.
Therefore, the
Therefore.
explanation of the universe's existence is God.
Okay. We're gonna watch like a 4-minute video. Wrap the whole thing up, okay?
We live in a Have you ever wondered why it exists? Why does anything at all exist? Gottfried Leibniz wrote, the first question which should rightly be asked is, why is there something rather than nothing? He came to the conclusion that the explanation is found in God. But is this reasonable? Everything that exists has an explanation of its existence. If the universe has an explanation of its existence, that explanation is God. The universe exists. From these, it follows logically that the explanation of the universe's existence is God. The logic of this argument is airtight. If the three premises are true, the conclusion is unavoidable. But are they more plausibly true than false? The third premise is undeniable for anyone seeking truth. But what about the first premise? Why not say, the universe is just there, and that's all? No explanation needed. End of discussion. Well, imagine you and a friend are hiking in the woods and come across a shiny sphere lying on the ground. You would, naturally, wonder how it came to be there. And you'd think it's odd if your friend said, there's no reason or explanation for it. Stop wondering. It just is. And if the ball were larger, it would still require an explanation. In fact, if the ball were the size of the universe, the change in its size wouldn't remove the need for an explanation. Indeed, curiosity about the existence of the universe seems scientific and intuitive. Someone might say, if everything that exists needs an explanation, what about God? Doesn't he need an explanation? And if God doesn't need an explanation, then why does the universe need an explanation? To address this, Leibniz makes a key distinction between things that exist necessarily and things that exist contingently. Things that exist necessarily exist by necessity of their own nature. It's impossible for them not to exist. Many mathematicians think that abstract objects like numbers and sets exist like this. They're not caused to exist by something else, they just exist by necessity of their own nature. Things that exist contingently are caused to exist by something else. Most of the things we're familiar with exist contingently. They don't have to exist. They only exist because something else caused them to exist. If your parents had never met, you wouldn't exist. There's no reason to think the world around us had to exist. If the universe had developed differently, there might have been no stars or planets. It's logically possible that the whole universe might not have existed. It doesn't exist necessarily. It exists contingently. If the universe might not have existed, why does it exist? The only adequate explanation for the existence of a contingent universe is that its existence rests on a non-contingent being, something that cannot not exist because of the necessity of its own nature. It would exist no matter what. So, everything that exists has an explanation of its existence, either in the necessity of its own nature or in an external cause. But what about our second premise? Is it reasonable to call the explanation of the universe God? Well, what is the universe? It's all of space-time reality, including all matter and energy. It follows that if the universe has a cause of its existence, that cause cannot be part of the universe. It must be non-physical and immaterial, beyond space and time. The list of entities that could possibly fit this description is fairly short, and abstract objects cannot cause anything. Leibniz's contingency argument shows that the explanation for the existence of the universe can be found only in the existence of God. Or, if you prefer not to use the term God, you may simply call him the extremely powerful, uncaused, necessarily existing, non-contingent, non-physical, immaterial, eternal being who created the entire universe and everything in it.
I just will leave you with the reference. It's a book called On Guard by William Lane Craig, and he has an app with a podcast called Defenders. He has like all his lecture in a series.